Samsung's Galaxy Fold 6 is planned to release by early July, and the interesting part is that the Fold 6 might finally get a price cut. From what we've heard so far, Samsung is going to release not one, but two versions of the Galaxy Fold 6. Specifically, this is going to come in the form of a Fold 6 and a Fold 6 Ultra. That being said, there are some conflicting rumors about how this is actually going to be implemented. One way they could do this is by releasing a cheaper version that would be branded as the Galaxy Fold 6, while the current model would be rebranded as the Galaxy Fold 6 Ultra. The other possibility is Samsung releasing a separate Ultra model that would be positioned above the current Fold. Whichever route they take, this might also be the year that Samsung finally updates the Fold's design. For the past few years, Samsung's been using basically the exact same design from the Fold 3, but instead of us getting the slightly rounded design that we're used to, we may end up getting a much flatter and more squared off design. This is also going to extend to the Galaxy Flip 6, which we're also expecting to be about half a millimeter thicker to accommodate a 4,000 mAh battery instead of the 3,300 one from the previous generations. One of the biggest surprises we've been hearing about the Fold 6, and probably one of the most pleasant ones, is better software support. In the past, Samsung's only really offered a few years of software updates for their phones, and this was kind of bad news for Fold users since their $2,000 phones were going to be obsolete in just a few years. But we've been hearing other rumors lately that this could change completely, because apparently Samsung might be planning to offer up to 7 years of software updates and 7 years of security patches with the Fold 6 like they did with the S24 lineup. So if you're afraid that your expensive phone will end up being completely forgotten in just a few years, then this should offer you that little bit of assurance that you'll be able to keep it for as long as possible. Another thing we've been hearing about is the cameras. Some earlier rumors said that the Fold 6 would use the same 200 megapixel camera as the S24 Ultra. And this is pretty significant since cameras are usually the first thing that folding phones tend to sacrifice to give a better price, so given the Fold 6 better cameras this time around would effectively bring it in line with the rest of the lineup. But lately we've been hearing that this probably won't actually be the case and that they'll still be sticking with the same 50 megapixel sensor that they used in last year's Fold. And if this is true, then there may actually be a good reason for this. A while back, Samsung announced that they made a 7-inch folding display that meets military-grade specifications for durability, and while we don't have any solid rumors, there is a chance that we could see something like this on the Fold 6. I mean, cameras are usually pretty costly, so it kind of makes more sense to give the Fold decent cameras and then allocate that extra money into making the phone itself better and more durable, especially since the display is usually the weakest part of folding phones. Even though the sensors may end up staying the same, they could end up using better processing, so the picture quality might still get some kind of improvement. If Samsung does focus on making the phone itself better, then they can shift their focus later on towards some of the luxuries like camera quality after they've given it a good foundation to build off of. Even though the Fold 6 might not really get a camera upgrade when it's released by this July, we've also been hearing rumors that Google's Pixel Fold 2 might actually have one of the best camera setups we've seen on a folding phone so far. If you want to hear more about that, then make sure to check out this video next, and I'll see you over there. Adios. When the Pixel Fold first came out, a lot of people had issues with the way that Google was going about things. Most people were pretty concerned about paying $1,800 for a folding phone that not only looked pretty dated compared to the competition, but also wasn't even optimized properly to run most of the apps that it was designed for. But according to more recent rumors, it sounds like Google's actually working on a second version that could address all of the issues that people had with the first version. The only downside is that it might not actually be released this year. Now, one of the biggest complaints that people had with the Pixel Fold was that it wasn't really properly optimized to run a lot of the apps that it was intended to run. Whenever you ran an app on the Pixel Fold, there was usually a pretty good chance that there would be some black borders around the screens, and this is because Google was actually using wider displays than what other companies like Samsung use on their foldables. But supposedly, Google will be addressing this issue by giving the Fold 2 some slightly wider displays that'll give the phone a bit more of a squarish design when it's open. And this would bring the design a bit more in line with something like the Galaxy Fold, which is also a bit more narrow. But supposedly the body itself would also be a little bit thinner, so not only would that shave off a little bit of the weight, but it would feel a little bit nicer in your hand when you're actually holding it, and plus it wouldn't feel as thick in your pocket. So what you're seeing right now is supposedly a leaked image of what it's expected to look like, and something you might notice is the camera bump in the top left. So what Google did with the Fold 1 was that they kept all the cameras in a sort of horizontal bar on the back, but what it looks like Google will be doing with the Fold 2 is actually changing this to use a square bump. And instead of using 3 cameras like on the Fold 1, Google will supposedly be adding a 4th sensor to the Fold 2. There's nothing definite yet about what it could be, but there's a possibility that it could either be a time of flight sensor for better portrait photos, or it could be an extra zoom lens for better zoom photos. And since cameras are usually the first thing to go on a folding phone to keep the cost down, Google might be trying to give the Fold 2 the best cameras on a folding phone right now. And chances are Google would be helping this by updating the camera processing with the Tensor G4 chip that should be running on the Fold 2. Now, even though it will be running the G4 processor, which is expecting to be running the Pixel phones coming out later this year, there is a possibility that it could actually be released next year instead, sometime in the first half of the year. But if it does come out this year, then it could end up coming out sometime in May during Google's I/O event. Now, even though the G4 might not be as powerful as the chips that run other flagship phones, Google's main strength in this area is artificial intelligence, and that could end up being the biggest strength on the Fold 2. And we're also hearing that Google could give the Fold 2 16 gigabytes of RAM along with the latest storage speeds. So this, alongside whatever new AI features that Google comes out with, should help compensate for that lack of speed. And even though we don't have anything concrete about battery life or charging speeds, we are hearing that Google is working on a phone with a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. And there is a possibility that this could be the Pixel Fold 2, but some other rumors speculate that it could instead be the Pixel 8a, which will be coming out later this year, possibly alongside the Pixel 9 lineup. If you want to hear more about the Pixel 8a, then be sure to check out this video next, because it actually looks like it could be one of the best value smartphones of this year. So be sure to go check that video out next, and I'll see you over there. Adios. Later this year, Google will be coming out with the Pixel 8a, and if the rumors we've heard so far are true, then it could be one of the best value smartphones of 2024. According to some leaked designs, it looks as if Google's going to go for the same curvy overall aesthetic that we've had on past generations, albeit with some thicker bezels. And if the leaked images are anything to go by, then we could even see it using matte glass on the back instead of the normal glossy glass that we've had on other phones. That being said, this could just be because it's a pre-production model, but there is always the possibility that we could see it on the final version. We're also expecting the dimensions of the phone to be a bit smaller in each direction by a few millimeters, and this could be because Google is cleaning up the design in a few other areas. As far as color options go, we did end up getting some leaked wallpapers of what we're expecting to get on the 8a, and knowing how Google loves to match the wallpaper colors with the actual color options, then we could end up seeing the phone coming out in green, blue, and black. And this is backed up by those leaked images that I talked about earlier, along with another leaked image of a rear tailbox showing a black version of the phone. As far as performance goes, we're expected to see the Tensor G3 processor from Google alongside 8 gigabytes of RAM. And we're also expecting to see 90 Hz refresh rates again, along with 5-watt wireless charging. And that Tensor G3 processor should give it up to 7 years of software updates, which means that if you're running a phone for as long as possible, then the Pixel 8a might be one of your best options. That being said, it seems like Google might actually be using a less powerful version of the G3 on the 8a specifically. And because of this, the G3 processor could also miss out on a lot of Google's AI features, which means that they might be reserving all of that for the higher end Pixels instead of the mid-range options like the 8a. And if this is true, then it could be that Google is trying to create a little bit of separation between those mid-rangers and the flagships, kind of similar to what Apple does with the A series chips on their regular iPhones and the Pro versions on the Pro iPhones. But on the plus side, there is a possibility that the 4,385 milliamp hour battery on the Pixel 7a could end up getting upgraded to a 5,000 milliamp hour battery on the 8a. And this is because Google recently filed a certification for a Pixel phone with a 4,942 milliamp hour battery, which a lot of people are speculating could be the 8a. That being said, be sure to take this with a grain of salt, because there's also some speculation that it could be the Pixel Fold 2, considering that the Fold 1 already has a 4,800 milliamp hour battery, and so that 5,000 would be a little bit more of a sensible upgrade. But there is always the possibility. And to top this off, there is a possibility as well that the 7a's 18-watt charging speeds could end up getting upgraded to 27-watt charging speeds, which would mean that not only is there a possibility of a bigger battery, but that battery could also be charged faster on the newer version. Now, with all this that we're hearing so far, it definitely seems like the 8a is going to be one of the best mid-range phones of 2024. But that being said, it does look like it could face some pretty
pretty stiff competition from companies like Apple. According to some other rumors, we've been hearing that Apple has been actually working on an updated version of the iPhone SE, which is going to get pretty much a complete redesign that could even bring it in line with the rest of the iPhone lineup. And if these rumors are true, then there is a pretty good possibility that the iPhone SE could offer a pretty good value against the 8A. If you want to learn more about this, then be sure to go check out this video next, where I go over pretty much everything we know so far about the iPhone SE. So go check that video out next, and I'll see you over there. Adios. The folding iPhone is probably one of the most anticipated smartphones of all time, but there's a possibility that the iPhone Flip could end up being shelved or canceled completely. Lately, we've been hearing reports that Apple has actually been ordering 7.8-inch folding displays from Samsung and that they're testing the displays internally for durability. According to these reports, Apple's been testing two different prototypes of the iPhone that kind of look sort of like the Galaxy Flip in terms of its form factor, and these prototypes are being used to test the durability of these displays to make sure that they hold up to daily use. Apparently, Apple's goal with this is to make the displays so durable that not only will there not be a crease in the display, but people would even be able to write on the displays using some form of an Apple Pencil. But it seems like that these stress tests aren't exactly going that well, because according to these reports, the displays that they've been testing have actually been creasing within just the first few days of their testing. And supposedly this has been putting a pretty big dent in Apple's plans, so because of this, it's been reported that they're actually going to end up shelving the project until they can get this issue worked out. If this does end up taking too long, then there is the possibility that they could just end up nixing the project altogether and just never coming out with a folding phone. But if it does go well, then we could end up seeing the iPhone Flip coming out no earlier than 2027. But Apple definitely isn't rushing this project by any means, and if and when it does finally come out, then it should end up being refined enough to a point where it can properly compete with its competition like the Galaxy Fold and the Pixel Fold. But thankfully in the meantime, Apple does seem to have some pretty big plans for the current iPhone lineup, and the iPhone 16 in particular does look to be a pretty solid upgrade over the iPhone 15 lineup. If you want to learn more about that, then be sure to check out this video next, because there seem to be some pretty interesting changes that Apple's planning for the entire lineup itself. So be sure to go check that out next, and I'll see you over there. Adios. So it's been kind of a while since we've seen the iPhone lineup get a design refresh, but recently we've been hearing rumors that the entire lineup could finally be getting redesigned this year with the iPhone 16. As it stands right now, the base iPhones have a diagonal camera layout, and the Pros have their cameras and everything else grouped together in a square module. But with the 16s, we could end up seeing Apple switching to a vertical layout, and this wouldn't even just be for the sake of a redesign. When Apple came out with the 15 Pro, they added the ability to record spatial 3D video that you could view through the Vision Pro. But recording this was exclusive to the Pro models, since Apple's implementation needed the main camera and the ultra wide to be stacked vertically on top of each other. And we have been hearing rumors that Apple might be bringing this down to the base iPhone 16 this year, but doing so would require them to reposition those cameras in that same vertical layout. Now, there are a couple ways that Apple could end up going about this. One of the ways is similar to the iPhone 10, where the cameras were flush in a black pill-shaped module, and the other is a bit more like the Galaxy S24 Plus, where the lenses are separate from each other. Whichever design they go with, they may end up doing it for both the base models and the Pro models to keep the lineup looking fairly consistent. But another rumor we've been hearing about lately is the possibility of a new capture button. Now, we didn't really have a lot of details on this at first when we first started hearing about it, but lately we've been starting to get more of the details of what it would actually be like if it came out on the iPhone 16. From what we've heard so far, it may sit flush in the bottom right-hand corner where the 5G antenna is right now. And not only would it let people take pictures kind of like an actual camera by pushing the button, but supposedly it would also be a touchpad that could let people zoom in or out by sliding their finger on the button. And while we're talking about cameras, we're also hearing about the possibility of upgraded zoom. Even though the base iPhones might not be getting a telephoto lens this year again, we have been hearing that the 16 Pro could get the 5x zoom lens from the 15 Pro Max in place of the 3x zoom from last year. But the 16 Pro Max could go even further with what's being referred to as a super telephoto lens. This was something that I kind of touched on in my original video on the iPhone 16 rumors a couple months back, but lately we have been hearing other news supporting the possibility of it showing up this year. As a point of reference for the camera geeks in the audience, the telephoto lens on the 13 Pro and the 14th Pro has a focal length of 77mm, while the 16 Pro Max's telephoto lens would have a focal length of over 300mm. Now, I'm not exactly sure how this would impact optical zoom at shorter distances, but theoretically it would give the Pro Max a much further zoom distance at a maximum. And there is also another rumor that's a little bit sketchy, so definitely take this with a grain of salt, but if it's true, Apple may be planning to merge the normal iPhone lineup with the iPhone SE. If they do this, then we could end up seeing a lineup with the iPhone 16, the 16 Pro, the 16 Pro Max, the 16 SE, and the 16 SE Plus. I'm not exactly sure how true this is, but Apple does seem to be refreshing the lineup every 2 years or so. With the iPhone XS, we had 3 iPhone models, which changed to 4 with the 12, and then the Mini got replaced with the Plus with the 14. So if Apple did merge the lineups this year, then it would fall right in line with this. But if it doesn't happen this year, then the rumor did indicate the possibility of it being pushed back to the iPhone 17 next year. But one rumor that seems to be way more likely to happen is better battery life. From the rumors we've had so far, the 16 Pro Max could end up getting upgraded to a maximum battery life of about 30 hours, which is up from about 29 hours on the 15 Pro Max. And this would be helped thanks to bigger batteries as well as the new A18 chips that will be powering the new iPhones. Speaking of these new chips, one of the big focuses of the A18 will be artificial intelligence. If you haven't heard, Samsung came out with their new Galaxy AI features on the S24 lineup, and Apple will supposedly be hoping to compete with this on the iPhone 16. If you'll learn more about some of the new features that they could come out with, I actually made a video on this, which you can check out by clicking right here. We don't really know too many of the details yet, but if you do want to hear what we do know so far, then be sure to click right here, and I'll see you over there. Adios.
Apple's been developing their own AI model for about a year now and could announce it to the public as soon as this June. Since 2023, Apple's been working on their own AI model, Ajax, which is built off of Google's JAX model. It's been commonly referred to by the community as Apple GPT due to its potential similarities to a model like ChatGPT. And even though Apple is still developing the model and working on issues such as privacy and also some internal disagreements within the development team, they plan to announce some new features built on Ajax during the 2024 Worldwide Developers Conference. Apple's core apps, along with their productivity apps like Pages, will potentially get auto-completion and auto-summaries similar to what we have in apps like Gmail. Similarly, Xcode could get automatic code completion, Apple Music could get automatic playlist creation, and even AppleCare could provide automatic troubleshooting through an AI chatbot. That being said, it may take a while for Apple to fully develop their AI. Some say that it may take Apple until sometime in 2025 before everything fully evolves, and that right now not all of Apple's planned features could make it this year. Additionally, since this will be an entirely new software feature, there's always a possibility that Apple may not support it on current devices. We don't know this for sure, but Apple is notorious for introducing new advanced features like this and building it specifically around new hardware rather than building in support for current or slightly older devices. Considering its potential announcement later this year, it could debut as part of iOS 18 on the iPhone 16 lineup. If you want to learn more about the iPhone 16, then be sure to check out this video next, and I'll see you over there. Adios. Samsung just trademarked a new name for their folding displays that may imply Samsung is about to fix the Galaxy Fold's biggest issue. Even though Samsung has made some of the best folding phones on the market right now, they've always had one glaring issue: durability, specifically the durability of their inner displays. Now, Samsung often likes to brag that the inner displays on their folding phones are made out of flexible glass, but the problem is they still need plastic screen protectors over the top to keep them from cracking. So for all intents and purposes, the screens are still mostly made out of plastic, and they're going to wear over time like plastic. Even a fingernail is enough to cause permanent damage to that outer layer. But Samsung may be about to change things going forward. Recently, Samsung filed a trademark for the name IronFlex with the Korean Intellectual Property Rights Information Service. According to the trademark, the name will apply to folding OLED displays that will be used on folding phones in the future. Specifically, Samsung plans to use these new displays on foldable smartphones, foldable tablet computers, and foldable wearable video display monitors. We currently don't know any of the actual details about what these new displays will be like or even what they'll be made of, but we can pretty much guess from the name that Samsung will be focusing heavily on durability. Even though it's a little bit of a stretch, there is a possibility that these new IronFlex displays could potentially be strong enough to warrant Samsung removing the plastic screen protector entirely. And if that's true, then this could be a major step forward for folding phones as a whole. It would really bring them one step closer to coexisting with normal smartphones, or even replacing them entirely at some point. If everything goes well, we could end up seeing it on the Galaxy Fold 6 lineup this year, but there's always a possibility of it debuting on a later version or on a completely different device. Only time will tell. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to check out this video next, and I'll see you over there. Adios. By 2025, Apple is going to ditch the older iPhone 8 style of the iPhone SE in favor of an iPhone 14 styled redesign. According to current rumors, this is going to involve the SE getting the same body as the iPhone 14, with the same type of aluminum being used, the exact same dimensions, a similar weight at just 6 grams lighter, and very similar features. For example, it's rumored that the 4th generation SE is going to drop the ringer switch in favor of the action button. This makes sense considering that Apple plans to make the action button a standard feature across the entire iPhone 16 lineup in 2024, so considering the 2025 release window for the SE4, this falls right in line with Apple's development plans. Unfortunately, Apple may not give the iPhone SE the new capture button that's expected on the iPhone 16 Pro, but we could potentially see this on a 5th generation model. But the ringer switch is not the only legacy feature being replaced. Earlier rumors stated that the iPhone SE could introduce a Touch ID sensor embedded in the lock button, but more recent rumors have changed, saying that Touch ID would be scrapped entirely, and in its place would be a notch for Face ID. Basically, this means that the 3rd generation iPhone SE could be the last iPhone to use Touch ID. But on the plus side, the display itself could be massively improved, with the 4.7-inch LCD display on the 3rd generation being replaced with a 6.1-inch OLED display, which would bring better colors and brightness. But the design and features aren't the only things being lifted from the iPhone 14. More recent rumors say that the new SE could even use the exact same 3,279 mAh battery, which would hopefully translate to much better battery life versus the SE3's 2018 mAh battery. Speaking of better battery life, Apple is planning to improve this even further by introducing their own custom modems for 5G. Right now, all iPhones with 5Gs use modems made by Qualcomm, but rumors say that by 2025, Apple will be introducing a new custom design modem for all new iPhones starting that year, with the intent of improving both cellular performance and battery life. And with the EU cracking down on their USB-C mandate, Apple's expected to release the SE with a USB-C charging port instead of Lightning. If I had to guess, we'd probably be keeping the same charging speeds as usual. There doesn't seem to be any word about whether it'll get MagSafe, but we may get more information about this the closer it gets to the launch date. And even though the SE could keep the single camera lens as usual, Apple may be upgrading it from the typical 12 megapixel sensor to the 48 megapixel camera from the past couple of iPhones. Even though we won't be getting any extra sensors this time around, Apple could use this to add the 2x optical quality zoom like we got on the iPhone 14 Pro. As far as price goes, there aren't any definite rumors yet, but it's been speculated that we could see the price increase from $429 to about $450 or even $500. And if that does happen, then this could make the SE4 a harder sell, considering that the big appeal of the SE lineup is its lower price. Unfortunately, it'll still be a couple of years before we see any of this with a planned release in 2025, but on the plus side, we will end up seeing some major upgrades for the iPhone 16 next year as well. So check out this video next to learn about everything we know so far about the iPhone 16 lineup, and I'll see you over there. Adios. If you're familiar with Sonos, you know that they're a very well-known, well-respected audio brand. They make a lot of high-end, amazing sounding speakers, subbars, and subwoofers designed for home use. But one thing that they've actually never made before is a set of headphones. But a few years back, Sonos actually released 2 patents that outlined the designs for just that. And these patents got a lot of people excited because Sonos is very well known for things like sound quality and focusing on consumers. And considering how bloated the ANC market is nowadays, they have a pretty good opportunity to release something that could stand out and offer a unique experience. And according to their patents, this was their exact plan. But the months went by, people were speculating, Sonos was making new developments that really seemed to indicate that they were focusing on headphones, but then all of a sudden, all that just kind of disappeared. No one was talking about them anymore, no more developments are being made. They almost just kind of seemed to fall off the face of the earth. But rumors have been starting up again in recent times, and it does look like they could be releasing very soon as a high-end competitor to something like the AirPods Max. How do they plan to do this? Well, according to the original patents, Sonos is planning to not only give them a unique design like the AirPods Max, but possibly even a heavy focus on things like features and especially sound quality. According to the patent, Sonos is planning to incorporate 2 speakers in each ear cup, along with support for Wi-Fi audio, which could indicate the possibility of Sonos planning to incorporate lossless audio for better sound quality. These patents also showed that they were planning to add things like microphones and also processors on the inside, which could indicate the possibility of a focus on noise canceling. As far as controls go, Sonos seems to be kind of experimenting a little bit on whether or not they go with things like physical or touch controls, and the patents themselves do outline a few different options like touch sensors and knobs on the headband. But Sonos is also reportedly working on their own smart assistant that could be designed specifically for controlling music, and possibly not even just on the headphones, but throughout the entire ecosystem. As far as ports go, the original designs outlined the possibility of a USB-C port along with a line-in port that could also double for charging and not just just audio, which is kind of interesting because I don't think I've ever seen that on a set of headphones before. One of the more interesting features that I think is going to have a lot more people talking about is called Sound Swap. And this was a feature that was first introduced on the Roam speaker from back in the day, and if this made it onto the Sonos headphones, then what it would do is it would allow any sound that's playing through the headphones to a nearby speaker. Kind of similar to what Apple does with the HomePod, where you can take your phone, whatever music is playing on it, put it near your HomePod, and then it would transfer the music from your phone to your HomePod. Now, it would definitely make a lot of sense for this to be sort of a key feature because Sonos is supposedly going to target people who already own a lot of Sonos products, so that may mean that the Sonos headphones will be integrated more with the ecosystem, and that will be somewhat of a main focus. Now, up until this point, I have focused mostly on the features that were outlined in the patents, but that actually wasn't the only thing that they had, because they also had two possible designs for what the headphones could look like. So this one that you're seeing right now is sort of a cross between the Sennheiser Momentum 3s and the Bose NC700s. They have these sliding arms that can connect to the ear cups on the outside using a pivoting joint. This design, on the other hand, it almost looks to be a bit more modern traditional in a sense. They kind of remind me of something like the Bowers & Wilkins PX7s, and they look a bit more traditionally shaped compared to the other options. But they still keep these sliding arms like the other design, and instead of connecting to the back, they instead connect to the side. Personally, I think that the first design is a little bit bolder and probably stands out a little bit more, while the other design is a bit more traditional in a sense, and I think it would definitely fit better within the rest of Sonos lineup. Let me know what you think. Now, it seemed at this point that Sonos was dead set on working on a set of headphones. At the very least, they had all the details in place, and all they needed to do now was just act on those patents and release an actual set of headphones to the public. But even with everything they had in place so far, it turns out that Sonos prep work was far from over. Turns out that about a year after the initial patents, Sonos bought a controlling stake in RHA, which is a UK-based audio company. And this kind of brought up an interesting question. If Sonos was working on a set of headphones and RHA was a company that focused more on earbuds, why would a company like RHA be of any use to them? Well, several months before the purchase, Sonos published another patent outlining a possible design for a set of earbuds. Specifically, the patent outlined some possible ways that these earbuds could approach things like charging and battery life. For example, one of the case designs showed the top plates of the earbuds effectively forming the top and bottom of the charging case, while another design showed the plates facing down in a charging cradle. But what's even more interesting is that some of the designs outlined the possibility of the earbuds operating using detachable battery plates instead of just batteries, and these plates could be swapped out once they run out of battery and need to be recharged in the charging case. And this, combined with the acquisition of RHA that I mentioned earlier, seemed to be kind of indicating that Sonos was looking beyond just headphones and possibly even expanding into other forms of wearable audio that could expand the lineup. But this actually wasn't the only acquisition Sonos made, because a few months after they bought RHA, Sonos acquired a tech startup called T2 Software. T2 was working on a Bluetooth codec called LC3, and this was basically designed to give better sounding audio using lower bit rates, which are effectively the speed at which your phone sends music to your headphones. And in theory, a device that used LC3 would have better sound quality while also using less battery life, so it was a lot more efficient than a lot of other Bluetooth codecs that phones tend to use. And this gave a lot of support to the initial rumors that the Sonos headphones, and possibly now earbuds, would have a big focus on sound quality. It already seemed that they were planning to integrate things like Wi-Fi audio to allow for lossless audio, but by integrating LC3, then they could possibly even allow for better sound over Bluetooth to kind of close that gap between those two technologies to some extent. Now, it seemed at this point like everything was pretty much just kind of set in place. Sonos had their technology protected by the patents, their designs and their lineup seemed all laid out, and they had their acquisitions that would help bring these products to life. Everything seemed set, and all that was left was a release date. But unfortunately, that never happened, actually until recently. So as these patents were coming out and acquisitions were being made, rumors began to go around about possible release dates. And at one point, Sonos had even announced plans to enter new product categories and even teased a launch event for new products. And when this came out, people were pretty sure this would be when the Sonos headphones would finally be released. But unfortunately, they never showed up. Instead, we ended up getting products like the Roam speaker and the Ray soundbar. And after this point, things just kind of began to go quiet. We never really heard any new rumors, there was no more information, and for a while it seemed like we never really heard from them again. But there's still good news about all of this, because it turns out that in November of 2023, it was rumored that the Sonos headphones may finally have a solid release date in April of 2024. And according to these recent rumors, they may end up releasing for a starting price of about $500, which would directly challenge something like the AirPods Max.
Now that may sound like kind of a high starting price to pay for a set of headphones, and I think the AirPod Maxes kind of prove that, but Sonos products are typically priced a bit more in the premium section, and since they plan to target them toward existing customers, and this could end up being a popular option among Sonos users and fans. That being said, there is no word about whether the earbuds mentioned earlier would end up showing up, but if the headphones do make a show and sometime in April, then this could pave the way for a set of earbuds in the future. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you doing so. And if you want to watch more, be sure to check out this video right here, and I'll see you over there. Adios.